Hi, everyone. Before we get into the discussions around this topic, that is joint arrangements, what I would like to do is take some names together and talk about, have you heard these names before? And probably, there would be some questions that I would like to kind of bring along when we discuss these names. Say, for example, Vistara Airlines or Vistara. Say, for example, Max Bupa, Indus Tower, SDFC Erco, okay, Hero Honda, Maruti Suzuki, and the list goes on, by the way. And the reason why I'm highlighting these names is that all of these so-called as entities, they are not arising, or they're not a single entity. Okay, what I mean to say is that these are collaborations. These are collaborations between two or more entities, two or more giant entities, for example. Okay, so the very obvious question that comes to my mind: different businesses or more than two different businesses work together. Why would they collaborate? Okay, I would say the obvious advantage that they foresee is the economies of scale. And when I say economies of scale, it could be, of course, with respect to reduced costs. Let's say joint investments in capital expenditure or capex, right? Could be common research facilities, for example, in case of a pharmaceutical company, or maybe a technology company, right? So where we are coming to is that when you look at these organizations, right, there is an arrangement which arises or which happens between two or more entities with a purpose. Okay, so there is an arrangement between two or more entities with a purpose, and that is where this is referred to as a joint arrangement. This is referred to as joint arrangement, and that is what is the topic's name, which is Ind AS 111. Okay, so if I were to look at it, let's say, now let's go a little more specific. If I look at Indus Tower, now what is this company all about? What is this company all about, right? Basically, an organization like Airtel and let's say Vodafone Idea, right? These are the two organizations which are one of the largest, telecom companies in India. Okay, so when they are operating, they know that there are telecom towers. So don't get carried away with this diagram, but let's say for the sake of it, there are telecom towers that they need to manage. Okay, where just to ensure that this transmission of data, or let's say the telecom services are appropriately maintained, right? Now we may argue that these two companies, let's say Airtel and Vodafone Idea, they can manage two separate towers. Of course, it is possible. But then what is the advantage that they have if they were to manage these two separately? Okay. The moment I say that these two are being separately managed and operated or run by these two companies, there is a cost of rentals, the maintenance, and of course, this would be upkeep or maintenance, the same thing. The whole idea is that what if they could actually collaborate and they could have a single tower at one location, for example, wherein they are both able to provide those telecom services with the use of this single unit, right? Doesn't that serve, or doesn't that give an advantage to both the companies? Practically, we are saying these are all these rentals, maintenance, upkeep costs are apportioned or divided between the two entities. And that makes a business sense, right? It makes a business sense to both the companies, no matter they are compete with each other, no matter they are just fighting for the market share. But the moment it comes to the cost portion, they might be happily working together as one entity, right? But now they are not one entity, of course. So what they do is they create a collaborative arrangement, they create a joint arrangement wherein there is a single tower, which is, for example, being, let's say, used by the entity, right? And accordingly, they are able to, let's say, work on that part. Okay. So, and this is where you start looking at the relevance of why entities collaborate with each other. Okay. Let's take another example. If I say there is a company called Vistara. Now, what is Vistara's business all about? So Vistara would be a collaboration between Tata Sons and Singapore Airlines. Okay. Now, why would they collaborate? They may collaborate maybe for the reason that Singapore Airlines wants to venture into the Indian subcontinent. They want to expand their horizons. And Tata Sons, instead of investing directly into, the aircrafts and the related licenses, etc., all those setup, they would rather have an arrangement done along with the Singapore International Airlines, so Singapore International Airlines or Singapore Airlines, right? And that is where these collaborations would come into the picture. And there could be different ways, right? There could be different reasons why these collaborations may be made, okay? The same example goes with, let's say, HDFC Ergo, where HDFC is a banking company versus Ergo as an insurance business. They collaborate, they join hands together so that they are, let's say, working towards a common goal of, getting more business into the insurance, which HDFC may not be directly interested in doing. Okay, and that is how you start looking at these so-called as joint arrangements. Okay, so why do we need a standard on that is an important question. Okay, now importantly, when you look at all these organizations, there are different arrangements, different contractual arrangements that these entities have got. And importantly, we want to understand the accounting and reporting requirements, right? You need to understand these accounting and reporting requirements in detail in terms of what is that arrangement all about. Okay, now that is where this standard has a relevance. That is where we talk about, of course, the joint arrangements, and that's the reason why this Ind AS 111 came into the picture. Okay, now we have, of course, spent a lot of time understanding the words like control under Ind AS 103 and 110, and also significant influence under, let's say, Ind AS 28, right? We talk about investment in associates, for example, right? A joint control is yet another categorization, is another, categorization within the perspective of, the group account. That's what we should be aware of. All right. So when I look into the need for this standard, of course, we talked about it briefly in terms of what is meant by a joint arrangement. We are essentially talking about a collaborative arrangement between two or more organizations, and how does that structure come into picture? We'll talk about that later, but essentially the joint arrangement would come with the set objective and an agreement around that. Okay, and basis that objective and agreement between those parties, the classification would be done, and basis that classification, the accounting is covered. That's what you want to remember. Now briefly, you want to just take into consideration that there are two types of joint arrangements. One is something which is referred to as jointly controlled operation or a joint operation, and a joint venture, right? Something that you just want to keep it in mind at this phase. We'll be discussing a very these terminologies well in detail in terms of what is the meaning of a jointly controlled operation and what is the relevance of a joint venture and how does it work from an accounting and presentation perspective, right? And finally, we're also going to talk about the accounting and disclosure requirements in case you dispose, let's say, a joint arrangement. You had made an investment into an entity and you decide to sell that. So how does the accounting requirement and disclosure requirement come in the picture, right? The one thing that you want to keep in mind is that it's a part of the group accounting, and the focus probably from the examination standpoint would be more towards you being able to identify whether you understand something to be a joint arrangement or not. Okay, so there could be scenarios you may be tested whether there exists a control under, of course, the business combinations and consolidated financial statements perspective, or is there a joint control under the joint arrangement accounting? Okay. Now, well, I would like to admit that there's no question being asked yet, but then it does not make this topic, as an irrelevant topic, right? You can always expect something, a very small section within the the consolidation question, or it could be a separate question where you are expected to be suggesting whether according to you it becomes a part of a joint arrangement or not. So that's something which is you would like to kind of remember. Okay. Now this is something that we briefly talked about, and there's a word that I want to kind of highlight is that joint control. We'll come to that in a minute, but it says that a joint arrangement is an arrangement over which two or more parties have joint control. Okay. Now, importantly, we know the meaning of control. We have discussed that under Ind AS 103. We have talked about the relevance of that under Ind AS 110. So what is there as a control versus a joint control? Okay. You need to remember that the joint control is control versus joint control. These are two mutually exclusive terms. All right. What I intend to say is that if there exists a control, it necessarily suggests a parent. Control necessarily means a parent-subsidiary relationship. And if that exists, there cannot be a joint control. At the same time, if there is a joint control, then naturally it would either be coming in form of, let's say, a jointly controlled operation or a joint venture that becomes a part of a joint arrangement, right? Let's use the phrase JA. It becomes a part of joint arrangement, which has its own accounting consequences, right? It is not a parent-subsidiary relationship at all. That's what you want to remember at this stage. And that's the reason why it's a different topic altogether. Okay. So when I say I'm looking at the meaning of a joint arrangement, where we say that the parties have a joint control, It could either be a jointly controlled operation or a joint operation, or maybe it's a joint venture with following attributes, with following characteristics. These are the parties are bound by a contractual arrangement. Okay, there is a clear arrangement that the parties involved are going to be bound by that. Normally, it is expected to be written, but it is not always the case. But you would see it's an explicit arrangement usually, which is not always necessary, of course, right? And at the same time, the contractual arrangement gives two or more of these parties joint control of the arrangement. Now, interestingly, what you would like to remember here is that if you see this statement, what does it signify? It can happen that there are four parties, let's say A, B, C, and D, right? It can happen that the arrangement may allow A, B, and C to have joint control, leaving D aside. Even that is going to be an example of a joint arrangement in this case, right? Of course, we'll be discussing these scenarios, these calculations, and application of those in different circumstances. But what you want to remember that not all the parties may have a joint control. Not every party involved may have a joint control. Two or more parties need to have a joint control. And we will see some permutations and combinations around that in terms of whether something constitutes a joint control or it does not constitute a joint control. Okay. As we said, the contractual arrangements are usually in writing. It's not always mandatory, however, or it could be identified through the articles of association. There could be minutes of meetings that could suggest that yes, there is a contractual arrangement in place. Now, what do you think these contractual arrangements would carry? Right? Normally, the contractual arrangements would carry the terms, for example, including what are the activities to be undertaken by each party, the term of the arrangement, right? Details of profit or revenue sharing. And when I say revenue, I intend to include also expenses share, right? What are probably the, let's say, collaborations on, or let's say the investments in the assets or liabilities, etc. So these are the usual terms which are a part of the contractual arrangement, and there is expected to be written policy documents, right? But it's not always the case, of course. It can be also, through an arrangement where it is evident. There could be implied, aspects. We'll be discussing those as well in a while. But then primarily there are contractual arrangements in place. Okay. So when I say I'm looking at the word joint control, and that is where you start looking at the relevance that each party has a role to play. It says that joint control is a contractually agreed sharing of control of an arrangement, which exists only when the decisions about the relevant activities require the unanimous consent of the parties sharing control. Okay. Everybody needs to agree. Everybody. who are a part of that joint control. They all need to agree, and then only the decision making can be done. Right? You would like to remember here, pick that information from, business combinations accounting standard 103, right? India's 103. You need to look at the word relevant activities. You don't have to have a unanimous consent for each and every small bit of information, but for the relevant activities, you need to be taking care of that. And of course, not all the parties, but only of those parties who are sharing the control. Okay. Now, the moment I say it's a joint control, it simply means no single party enjoys full control. The moment I hear the single party enjoying full control, it becomes a part of a parent-subsidiary relationship. Now, that's a different standard. Okay. So collective control has to be available. And of course, it has to be a unanimous consent of all the parties having joint control on the decision for the arrangement. Okay. So if I say there is a entity X, okay, and the arrangement goes like this. There is a party A, party B, party C, party D. Let's say four, set of people or entities who have an investment in entity X. Okay, so let's say this entity controls, or this entity has 30% stake in entity X. This party has 30% stake in entity X. This party has, let's say, 25% stake in entity X, and let's say the remaining, so it's 15% remaining. All right. So that's where the stakes are. Now, essentially, say for any decision making, for all relevant activities of company X or entity X, there is at least, let's say, 80% voting required, right? It's a little hypothetical, but say for the sake of argument, you need at least 80% of the voting to be, to be done in favor for that decision making to be taken. Now, in all scenarios, right, whatever permutation combination that you make, you only see that this is possible if A, B, and C together agree to that decision. Okay, there's no other way out. There's no other way around, right? So even if D is not agreeing, it does not really make a difference. We're not saying that D would not agree, but importantly, the consent from A, B, and C is required at any point in time. You cannot have otherwise the decision making to be done. And that is where you start looking at, if I take you back there, there's a collective control. A and B together or A singly cannot take on the decision. Okay. So there's a control which is available to, let's say, a combination of entities together. No single party enjoys the full control. And then all those parties having the joint control, they must agree at the same time. All right. What you also want to remember here is, it's critical to understand it here. We'll have some examples to discuss that later. Let's say in this case, instead of 80%, let's say you require at least 60% voting rights. All right. So imagine what all can be done, what all can happen in this case. Maybe a combination of A plus B, which is 30% plus 30% can work. That of course makes it 60%. So A and B can come together and take a decision. That's possible. It can also happen A plus C plus D, which is 30% plus 25% plus 15%, which becomes 70%. Even with that combination, you can actually take a decision Also, if you look at B plus C plus D, which is the same as the second scenario. So even in this case, the decision making can be done. Can we call it a joint control? Or does this allow, to be called as a joint control? In this case, we say there is no joint control since there are multiple ways the decision making can be done. Right? There are different ways in which the decision making can be done. Singly, all the parties who are interested, they can be, they can be picked out. For example, let's say, if you look at the A and B scenario, naturally C and D are taken away. But at the moment I say I'm looking at A plus C plus D, B is ruled out, or B plus C plus D, then A is ruled out. Okay, so in these cases, the second aspect, which is unanimous decision of all the parties having a joint control, is missing. Okay, now there's another scenario in the same case. If I say that you need at least 95% of the voting rights, it simply means you have to have even D as a party to that contract. Right? Even D needs to give his consent to be able to take a decision making. Okay, so in that line, in that direction, when you start observing it, you assess that this line has significant relevance, the collective control part and unanimous decision. Okay, so when I say I'm looking at the previous scenario, let's say, if I really bring it again, let's say this is 40%, just taking another, percentage, just change it randomly. Okay, so if I say it as 40% here, then again it doesn't make a difference, because in a scenario, for example, if I say that at least 40% of voting rights are sufficient to take a decision, although it's a little hypothetical, of course, but then A himself can take a decision, or B and C together, or A and B together, or A and C together, or A and D together, or even C and D together. They can all take a decision. So that would not allow, or they have to not be considered as a part of a joint control. Okay, we'll be discussing more scenarios with the help of examples, but this is something that you need to appreciate, that where the joint control comes, two aspects. One is collective control and unanimous decision. Okay, let's have a look at this question. It says that two parties, A and B, agree in their contractual arrangement to establish an arrangement. Each has 50% of the voting rights. The contract specifies that at least 51% of voting rights are required to make a decision with respect to the relevant activities. Do A and B have a joint control? What do you think of that? The moment I say I'm looking at this scenario, okay, I know A has 50%, B has 50%, you need at least 51%. Neither A nor B can singly take a decision. Neither A nor B can take a decision on his own with respect to the relevant activities, which simply means that there is a clearly established joint control when both of them agree. All right, that means there is a collective control and unanimous decision making. Right, nothing is apparently there, but the contract itself suggests that with this 50% each, right, you can't take a decision. So it implies that the joint control exists, even if the wording of the arrangement says something else. It's very clear it's an example of a joint control. Okay, Now, this is where you start looking at the briefing part of it. We say that, does the contractual arrangement give all the parties or a group of parties? This is important. Even a few people within the group, not single, even a few people within the group, if they have a collective control and the decisions require the unanimous consent of those parties that collectively control, then the arrangement would be referred to as a joint arrangement, right? If neither of the two is correct, then it is not going to be a joint arrangement. We have talked about that briefly. The joint arrangement could either be in form of a JV, joint venture, or a jointly controlled operation or a joint operation, something called as a JO. All right. All right. So let's move forward on this. And this is something which is the concept that we have dealt with before, but let's have a look at it in a more formal way. It says that when you have, for example, combination of parties, right? There could be cases where the contract necessitates a minimum percentage of voting rights to make decisions about those relevant activities. Now, if it can be achieved by more than one combination, this would be critical. If this could be achieved by more than one combination of the parties, that arrangement is not a joint arrangement, of course, unless it is very much specified that which parties or combinations of parties are required to agree unanimously. Okay, so I think that would be easier to understand with the help of some examples. The first scenario says the 75% vote are required to direct relevant activities. There are three parties: Party A, Party B, and Party C, with a shareholding of 50%, 30%, and 20% respectively. Now, in this scenario, what you should observe is the only possible combination is A plus B, where you are achieving more than 75%, right? It is only A plus B wherein this combination is achieved, which is more than 75%, which actually suggests that this is the only possible combination. All right. We're saying that in this scenario, there is one single combination that is possible to achieve the 75% voting rights. Okay, it simply means that the given arrangement would be an example of a joint arrangement. This is a case of a joint arrangement specifically. Okay. As we said that even though A can block any decision, A does not control B, because A needs also B to agree. So that means that there is a joint control between A and B as far as the entity is concerned with respect to the voting rights of that. Okay, let's have a look at the second example. It says that again, 75% vote to direct relevant activities. A has 50%, B has 25%, and C has 25% as well. Now, in this case, what you need to understand, if I look at A plus B, that makes it 50 plus 25. Of course, it is 75%. So this is possible combination. All right. At the same time, A plus C also results in achieving that benchmark of 75%. Now, this is also a possible combination. And the moment I say it is more than one possible combinations, then it is not a joint arrangement, right? When it's more than one possible combinations, it is not a joint arrangement. However, you need to remember that if the agreement specifies that A and B need to agree for any arrangements, for any decision making about relevant activities. A and B need to agree, and 75% voting rights have to be present, have to be available, have to consent with respect to the decision making. That would again suggest that there is the only single possible combination, and that would result into a joint arrangement. Okay, so need to be carefully assessing that in terms of what is those possibilities, what are those permutations and combinations when you try to understand the relevance of that. But in the given scenario, since nothing is mentioned, there is no control or joint control because multiple combinations could be used, A and B, and of course A and C as well. Okay, let's have a look at the third example, which says that to take a decision with respect to the relevant activities, you need majority voting. Okay. Now, if you observe that party A has 35% stake, party B has 35% stake, and the remaining, the remaining 30% is widely dispersed. It's not exactly a single party now. It's a lot of people, right? Now, in this scenario, again, what you assess is that A plus C as well as A plus B can achieve more than 50%. Again, we are talking about multiple combinations which are possible. There are multiple combinations which are possible, which means it is not a joint arrangement. Okay, that's how you start understanding this part. And that's what is provided to us. There's no control or joint control because multiple combinations could be reached, could be used to reach that agreement there. All right. This is an example of an implicit joint control. Let's have a look at it. It says that C and D operate in telecom industry and entered into a joint arrangement to combine their 4G access networks. The purpose is to reduce operating costs for both the parties, make capital infrastructure savings, and obtain economies of scale. This is where we started. Okay, why probably the businesses collaborate from jointly managing and maintaining a consolidated network. All significant decisions about strategic investing and financing activities are decided by a simple majority. C and D each have one vote in the decision-making process. The question is discuss whether it is a joint arrangement or not. Okay. Now, if I look at this scenario, I have entity C and I have entity D. There is a one vote available here, one vote available here as well. The only way to constitute majority is that both C and D need to agree. That is, a unanimous consent is required. And there is a collective control. The operating and financing decisions are made together by C and D. Okay. There's only one possible combination. They both have to come together. So unanimous consent, and also the collective control exists because all the relevant decision making can only be done by C and D together. That means it's a classic case of a joint arrangement for us. There's nothing which is specified, right? There's nothing which is specified, but it becomes a part of, let's say, a joint control straight away. That's where this solution suggests all decision about the relevant activities require consent of both the parties, and it does not explicitly require the unanimous consent, but since the decision has to be made by the majority, would simply mean that this is an example of an implicit joint control. Okay. Let's have a look at this scenario as well. It says that P and Q set up a joint venture company, which is entity PQ. Okay, so the way normally organizations work, right? They may create a different setup. We talked about the example of Indus Towers, right? So both P and Q together created a new entity called as a PQ by signing a joint operating agreement. Both investors delegate one director to PQ's board of directors, right? So they're each, let's say, identifying one director as a representation on the board. Both directors have to agree unanimously on the decision of the annual budget as well. So it looks like a joint arrangement so far. The joint operating agreement also sets up an operating committee and specific powers delegated by the board of directors to the committee. The committee has the main operational decision-making responsibility. The decisions are made by a simple majority. However, only P can appoint members to the operating committee. And if the board does not have, let's say the board does not have the power to revoke the decision-making of the operating committee. The question is whether PQ is a joint arrangement or not, right? Now, importantly, what you want to understand here is that if you look at this setup, okay, so there is entity P, there is an entity Q, there is an arrangement, right? There's one director from or as a representation from company P, and also there is one director as a representation from company Q. All right, that's the information which is provided to us. Okay, now there is also an operating committee, for example, which is identified. The agreement suggests that there's an operating committee and the decisions are made, any decisions are made by a simple majority in the committee, and only P can appoint the members to the operating committee, right? So from that perspective, we are saying that if this operating committee is taking those relevant decisions, right, relevant operating decisions, the entire power or the control sits purely with company P, and the board, which comprises of both representations from P and Q, cannot revoke the decision making by the committee itself, right? What does it mean? It simply means that essentially the control is assumed to be lying with P, right? Apparently, on the face of it, it appears it's a joint control or a joint arrangement, but essentially with the presence of the operating committee, and P, of course, has every authority to let's say, appoint the members of that committee, which suggests that one way the control is with P, and the board cannot really overrule the decision making which is taken by the committee. So in that sense, it appears that P controls, and it may not exactly be a scenario of a joint arrangement, right? So all the facts and circumstances of the all the facts and circumstances need to be understood, right? In what context is this agreement drawn? What are those decision-making authorities that the operating committee has got? All those factors would be really, really critical to assess what is the appropriate arrangement here. But on the face of it, with the facts of the situation, we may say that PQ is not a joint arrangement, but P has control over PQ because the decisions are not made by the board, but at the operating committee level, wherein P has the control over the operating committee there. All right.